Hello! Republic Defender 78 here, and I have just over 700 hours of Helldivers 2 playtime, and after all that awesome battling for Super Earth, I've come to a conclusion. Helldivers 2 should totally be pay to win. Arrowhead is in a rare position to have their cake and eat it too by being the first game to have success with a pay-to-win strategy. Arguably the most persistent issue the game faced maybe early on was this question. What is Helldivers 2? A power fantasy or extraction shooter? I would offer that Arrowhead, the company behind the game, has put themselves in position to do both. If you haven't been following closely along with the development of Helldivers 2, let's go back and talk about one issue that has come up with the game since its release. There are many major events that took place over the course of the live service game's existence in and outside its ongoing campaign, events like the infamous Malevelon Creek and the nerfing of the railgun. I won't rehash these events, but a general summary of how they broke down created a schism that maybe the developer hadn't anticipated. The noticeable anger of nerfing certain weapons led to a particularly divisive argument on platforms like Twitter and Reddit, and that argument boiled down to what the game actually was. Was it a gritty, satirical extraction shooter where the player is supposed to barely survive, or was it a power fantasy where players mowed down their enemies while Fortunate Son blared in the background? During this conversation, there were many great points made that bubbled to the surface. Chief amongst these was the very simple, you don't need to nerf weapons in a PvE game. Let's make sure we're all on the same page and define PvE. PvE stands for player versus environment, but a more useful definition is player versus the computer. The enemy in a PvE game is typically the computer-controlled combatants, and whether or not players can hurt each other varies from game to game. Helldivers 2 is a somewhat unique game where it's completely PvE but also allows for friendly fire. Some would argue that the weapons in the game are limited in their utility, sometimes in ways that players find head-scratching, in order to facilitate the sensation of difficulty the developers desire. However, this is still a video game, and no matter the difficulty, many players are simply going to excel at the game and in the process make a mockery of their enemies. So why suggest that Helldivers 2 developer Arrowhead Games add a pay-to-win aspect to this arguably successful game? First, we'd better define pay-to-win. Pay-to-win is a term you might come across a lot when looking through mobile games. In a nutshell, a game that features PvP, player versus player, might sell individual items that are really powerful. So powerful that they give one player a noticeable advantage over others. This is a gross oversimplification. This is an aspect of gaming that has evolved over the years, and complaints of P2W are often nuanced. Games like Helldivers 2 create individual items with unique stats, which creates an opportunity to make powerful items. To date, Helldivers 2 does not engage in pay-to-win. But damn it, they oughta. The power fantasy versus extraction shooter debate was never really settled so much as Helldivers serves a diverse fanbase that gets what it needs from what the game provides. At over 700 hours of playtime, I can say that my experience as a solo bot diver slash saboteur slash Hulk assassin, my time sprinting quietly along open plains without another soul in sight, is vastly different than anything you'll see Thick Fillet do. His matches are apparently outside the gates of hell, and he's doing all that with a dude that's not more powerful than my own, and sometimes with similar items. Since the game has so much to offer, while also providing one of the most uniquely rewarding narrative experiences to date, I believe that Arrowhead is in a unique position to have their cake and eat it too. Arrowhead does something brilliant with their difficulty scaling that they don't always get credit for. Just like the Helldivers, enemies in the game also don't have levels. This small change corrects one of online gaming's most infuriating features, level mobs. You can fight some level 5 street thugs in DCUO and wipe the floor with them, but then go 2 blocks over and some level 15 street thugs are suddenly bulletproof. The Zillow rating on that area should account for that. It is completely immersion-breaking and par for the course for a lot of online games. Maps are broken into almost arbitrary zones, and the various zones are rated for difficulty. I don't know enough about level design to even wonder why that's done, but I've played enough to always find it tedious at best. Arrowhead simply has more respect for its customers and takes what I call a relative realism approach. In other words, they follow the rules of hardcore fiction, meaning that they make the rules and follow them as closely as possible. When it comes to Helldivers, a Hulk is a Hulk is a Hulk. It has set stats and abilities, and it is out there looking to get you. That's it. As the name suggests, it's a large enemy that is heavily armored. It's too tough to appear on lower-level difficulty missions, and makes its debut as the primary objective on level 3 difficulty missions. The difference between hulks on level 3 versus level 7? Nothing. Except where there was one surrounded by multiple smaller enemies, now there are maybe 5 or so, surrounded by smaller enemies. For Helldivers, quantity is king. The level of difficulty is almost always overwhelming odds. As a diver, you're constantly filled with the notion that the human game master that runs the game's live campaign, Joel, an acronym for I break for total party wipes, knows exactly which enemy you hate the most, and then sends an infinite amount of exactly them at you. The joke's on Joel, I hate all the bots equally. Over the past year, Helldivers has seen its highs and lows, and throughout all of it there has been a conversation about balance. Weapons are introduced and then adjustments are made periodically, with most of the conversations surrounding the game being focused on this process. Honestly, it makes for great content and a lot of interaction within the community of players. My hot take, or probably bad opinion, is that the community would benefit if Arrowhead added a deliberate pay-to-win strategy on top of what they are currently doing. So, what exactly am I suggesting? Since Arrowhead loves to work within their narrative, they should lean into that to provide the desired player experience. The most important rule would be to leave the current base game untouched. The devs already laid the groundwork when they introduced the first IP crossover with the Sony game Killzone. When they introduced those items, they also introduced manufacturers to the game story. We've already got Terminator, Starship Troopers, Halo with a dash of Mass Effect, Killzone officially, so why not a little Hunger Games? The devs obviously have a story to tell. They could do that and make a little money on the side. What if these corporate sponsors, for reasons unknown, felt super patriotic and started selling premium weapons through the Super Earth leasing program, of course? I have to assume that a big aspect of the game's current pay system doesn't exactly fit the narrative. Who is exactly buying this stuff anyway? Helldivers is not a role-playing game. I promise you that, like many players, my very first diver didn't survive training and died during the diving turret fire demonstration. The contract might say something about everything belonging to the ship's next occupant. Wouldn't it be awesome to get thawed out and find out you have an advanced arsenal you'll have a lifetime to spend trying to pay off? If you're lucky, you'll complete a mission and your family won't inherit your debt. There's already a robust statistical system to determine the capabilities of the various weapons in the game. This suggests a considerable amount of control over the player experience. That only means that Arrowhead could probably add weapons that do, in fact, give players a leg up in even the most difficult settings. The reason this would work is because of how Arrowhead has set the game's challenge and difficulty. The company has completely redefined what it means to grind. They have seen game after game force players to do the exact same thing over and over, turning their gameplay experience into a literal Groundhog Day scenario. Helldivers maps randomly generate, objectives vary to some degree based on difficulty but still appear randomly on a given map. So, while you definitely are taking that hill for Super Earth again and again because war is hell, but for the most part, it's a different hill every time. That game? That glorious game would still exist, even if some super destroyers dropped Helldivers with some serious OP hardware. Those divers? They're gonna crank that shit up to 11 and have themselves a laser knife fight on the edge of a volcano, with chainsaws. And I'll still be having more fun than you should be able to have for $40, with pants on crawling through the mud, sneaking up on a Hulk that picked the wrong planet to be on. I would never suggest this for a typical multiplayer game, but there is nothing typical about Helldivers 2. In the past few years, we've seen this industry fail at live service at catastrophic levels. The CEO may have walked it back, but he did intimate that Arrowhead was in the business of making money, and if they could make a little, they would be able to do more things the ladies love. Leaning into paying for power could solidify Arrowhead as THEE gaming dev. And most importantly, they would actually be able to please a segmented audience in ways no company has. Dante here. I'm trying out this voiceover software because my audio equipment leaves much to be desired, and this is an easy workaround to get my point across. I hope you like this video. Please leave a like if you do. I would love to hear your thoughts on this issue in the comments. For Republic Defender 78, level 105. Super Sheriff, seriously, how could I not take that badge? Take care.